Located on the modern-day border between Poland and Ukraine lies a haunting relic of the past, Fort No. 1. Half consumed by a catastrophic explosion and half erased by the relentless passage of time. It's almost hard to believe that when this stronghold was operational, it was so important and top secret that the entire zone around it was totally forbidden, to the point that just passing by it might have been enough to get a man shot. So, what really happened here, and why are there abandoned tunnels and towers so close to the border of Ukraine? Stay tuned to find out, as today we uncover the story of Fort No. 1. I'm your host Ryan Socash, and you're watching It's History on Location. Let's start off with a little context. You see, before Fort No. 1 became an eerie relic forgotten on the border between Poland and Ukraine, neither of those countries existed on the map. Rather, this land was a frontier zone of empires caught between the Austro-Hungarian and Russian powers, and the nationalities, like Poles, Slovaks, Ukrainians, and more, were trapped within. In that context, the late 19th century was a time of intense rivalry. You could almost think of it as a type of Cold War, but before the 20th century, with both sides racing to secure their borders against the looming threat of war. A situation that is also playing out once again, not all that far from here. Anyhow, to bolster its defenses, the Austro-Hungarian Empire constructed the Przemyśl Fortress complex, an expansive system of fortifications designed to protect its eastern frontier. Some have compared it to a 19th century Pentagon, but built to withstand heavy artillery and prolonged sieges. Among these defenses, Fort No. 1 stood out as a crown jewel, boasting amenities like a telegraph office, kitchens, and even an elevator, essentially a high-tech military base for its time.
Why they choose Przemyśl? Because city lies on the hills, and the roads from deep Russia to Hungary goes through Przemyśl, so it was easier to defend it here. That's why the Austro-Hungarians raised the fortress around the city. And what you have to understand, the fortress of Przemyśl is a ring fortress. It's got two rings of forts. There's an outer ring, it's 45 kilometers long. It's got 15 main forts, 27 supporting ones. We are right now on the Fort No. 1 on the outer ring. It's called Salis-Soglio. The name of the fort is actually the name of the first architect of the fortress, Daniel from Salis-Soglio. When the Austro-Hungarians raised the fortress around the city, that was a huge kick for the city, because what you have to know, there was about 15,000 citizens in the city when they started to build the fortress. When they finished, shortly before the First War, there was 35,000 people living in the city. That is the border with Ukraine. You can see the signs, Polish and Ukrainian, over there between them.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. When I tell you that there was 45 kilometers of forts around this outer ring, the forts been never connected together, because people often ask me, why Russians didn't walk through the forts between one and another. From one fort to another would be like 6-7 kilometers. But the Austro-Hungarians, when they raised the fortress, they created in a way that one fort could shoot to another. So they defend itself between them.
Now, exploring this fort in person is possible, but with steep falls, pitch-black tunnels, and the possibility of arrest for getting too close to the border, it needs to be done cautiously, and ideally, with the help of a guide. We started our tour at the front gate.
What is special about this gate?
You see, that gate was called a swallow's tail. It was, before the war, each fort has this kind of the gate. But the Austro-Hungarians figured out that if the Russians would destroy that gate would collapse. The only entrance from the fort, the only way out, was cut out. That's why they dismantled most of those gates. They left only one on this fort, because that fort is not typical. That fort could defend itself in the circle. That's why they left this gate here.
Beyond the gate, we passed through the portal, stepping into a series of 4 courtyards. These spaces were more than just open areas. They were the lifeblood of the fort, designed for troop movement, supply distribution, and day-to-day operations. And perhaps in many ways at the heart of those operations was the kitchen, where meals were prepared to sustain the garrison daily, but also during long sieges.
Now, here we find one of the two fortress kitchens. You can still see original traces of what once was, including the foundation where the well was, now filled in, the places for runoff water to flow, as well as some of the original tiles. And I can't help but observe that this is a pretty small space for such a massive.
Yeah, that's why you get two kitchens in every fort.
And what was served here? What kind of meals?
Well, at the beginning, the meals been typical as in each house. Like you got the soup, you got the second dish. On the half of the second siege, the food was getting worse because they didn't have too much meat. That's why they killed the horses. And actually, if we are talking about being a soldier during that time, you've been serving here in the fort. That was good because you got always warm food. If you've been sent somewhere on the trenches, outside on the field, there were two factories in the city that would produce, the food in the cans for soldiers. So of course you get the food, but it was cold, mostly.
So here was comparatively safer, warmer.
Yeah, it was better. I think it was better to serve in the building, in the fort, than somewhere on the fields.
After feeding an entire garrison in the kitchen, you can probably imagine where the hundreds of soldiers would need to go next. Yep, I'm talking about the restroom.
The most important thing in the fortress, this is the toilet, okay? So what's clever here? In 1914, there would be a wall right here, as you could see. Because this part, you can see this toilet is smaller than this part over there. Why? Because this toilet is for officers.
So the officer's toilet is separate from the common soldiers?
Part of the fort, yeah, for the regular soldiers.
What would the sanitary conditions have been like?
Well, you couldn't use the toilet in the forts before the war has started. Why? Because you have to remember there is no system that took everything from the toilet somewhere else.
Okay.
It's only a hole beneath us, So they've been using wooden toilets outside the forts. And when they've been surrounded by Russians, they could use only this toilet.
There's one facility here. There's one on the other side of this courtyard. Is that the end? Were there more
That's it.
toilets?
No, only two.
And the showers, where would the showers have been?
On the other side.
Okay, and how often were soldiers allowed to use the shower?
I think one time in a week, like if they would have water right here, because later when during the fights, they didn't have a time to think about it.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I have one more question about bodily needs.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit weird. You got a bunch of men in here for years on end, right? Do they have any company, any ladies, any kind of access, if you know what I mean?
Ladies, the prostitution was legal. And there was a lot of prostitutes in Przemyśl during that time. When we look at the documents in 1897, there were 17 public houses, as they called them. And that was just a part of it, Of course, there are separate prostitutes for officers and separate for soldiers.
Would they bring the ladies in, or would the men go to the city?
There was no way to bring them here. They only could met the girls in the city.
Okay.
No, not in the forest.
How often would that go on for a common soldier?
Well, I think before the siege has started, that would be quite often because they have nothing else to do, So every time that they've been free to go on the city, they would probably go to the casinos and things like that. But when the siege has started and they've been fighting, I don't think they have a time to think about it.
What really amazed me about the fort was its cutting-edge technology. Despite lacking electricity, they managed to operate human-powered hoist elevators, an ingenious solution that kept this fortress functional and ahead of its time.
Yeah, this is the main elevator. Actually, this is the cannon elevator.
Okay.
And it gives them the opportunity to bring the cannons here and put them right there to shoot on the Russian side.
So you would have to load it.
Yeah.
There'd be guys
and
here.
Each of this building was prepared as a shelter because when the Russians would start to shoot, the Austro-Hungarian soldiers could hide in this building, but also you got cannons right here between the buildings, yes? So if the Russians would shoot to one of those cannons and ammunition would blow up, those buildings are supposed to stop them.
The elevator would have come up here.
Yeah. You got cannons over there and you bring cannons up to this part of the fort. So here you would have an elevator for cannons, and here you got smaller elevators for ammunition. So they go up and from the down floor. Of course, no electricity was used, so you have to use your muscles to bring everything up.
And the elevators were just the beginning. The telegraph office was yet another marvel of its time, a crucial hub for communication.
So this was the telegraph room, and the operator would be standing here, working.
Well, we probably 3 or 4 soldiers working as here by the telegraph.
What type of correspondences would come through the telegraph?
Well, you know, during that time, there was only a short messages. Like, you know, we've been attacked from this part or the other one. You have to know that the Austro-Hungarians got a map that looked like chess. When you ever play chess, you got field number A1, A2, and things like that. Mm-hmm. So Austro-Hungarians got those kind of the map. They use balloons, and the people that been standing in the balloon as the observators. They've been looking from which directions Russians are shooting. They see the smoke, and they would say, okay, over there. So they would ring to this fort and said, shoot on B3. So the Austro-Hungarians shoot on that direction.
Was that an effective system?
Yeah, it was. It was.
Would the balloons ever get shot down?
No, never, because they've been in the center of the city. So they've been outside of the range of the Russian cannons.
Although the fort embraced cutting-edge technology, not everything here relied on innovation. In fact, some defenses leaned on timeless strategies like the moat.
So you see, this is the moat that was surrounding the fort. And as you can see, that wall is about 5 or 7 meters high. So if the Russians would come here, they would jump to the moat. There was no way that would get out without the ladder. And each moat in that kind of a fort was defended by 3 bunkers. 2 on the left and right side, 1 in the middle. So if the Russians would jump to the fortress, they would shoot from those bunkers. And also they've been shot by the soldiers that been standing here. So it was a suicide mission to get there.
Did this moat surround the entire structure?
Yes.
So they'd be standing guard here. Someone came to the moat, they'd be shot. Did they actually shoot people in this moat? Did anyone ever try?
No, the Russians never get so close to this fort.
So it was a good way to discourage people.
Yeah, what you have to remember, I was telling you there was 45 kilometers of forts, but they've been surrounded by 100 kilometers of barbed wires.
Okay.
And the Austro-Hungarians cut the trees. They destroyed the houses that been on the field before the fortress. They destroyed most of the churches, because in every church you got this huge tower with a bell. Why they destroyed that? So nobody could use it, you know, for snipers or things like that, you know, observation points. So they've been well prepared when the Russians would came here. And that would be the main tunnel that goes to the moat. It's collapsed right now because the Austro-Hungarians blow it up. And that tunnel would go to one of those 3 bunkers that have been defending the moat.
These tunnels were cold, dark, and damp. Even so, my impression bears no gravity in comparison to what the men experienced in these same tunnels when under siege.
The fortress was surrounded by Russians at the beginning of September 1914. The defended army was 128,000 soldiers, and the Russians just came here with the army that was 93,000 soldiers. They surround the fortress, they cut off completely the train lines and everything, the supporting lines. And of course, at the beginning, Russians have asked if the fortress would give up without the fight. Okay. They would be happy about it. But the fortress was well prepared. General Kuzmanek, the main commander of the fortress, said, we're gonna wait what's gonna happen. Of course, the Russians been trying to break through the fortress a couple times. The first siege was a month long. They never break through the forts. And in November 1914, the fortress was surrounded for a second time. And the second siege has started on November 1914. It was ended in March 1915, almost 180 days. The winter during that year was very harsh. Russians actually, during the second siege, they don't want to fight. They've been just waiting until the food will be over in the fortress.
Starving them out?
Yeah, starving them out. That was the plan. But the Austro-Hungarians still keep them in the fight. No, still push them to fight. And, well, during the winter, Austro-Hungarians figure out that the food is getting over. They killed almost 20,000 horses, to eat them as a meat. When the soldiers, they've been living in the forts, like this fort that you see here, there will be like 300 soldiers in the fort, but you got only 200 beds. Why? Because the Austro-Hungarians create warm bed regulation, which means you got 200 beds and 300 soldiers, because 100 soldiers, they are on duty. Then they switch up with the others. But as the soldiers said, the beds in the fortress wasn't warm in the bed. Those beds been so full of insects that would eat you for a whole night that you have to move all the night. So that was living in the fortress. That's how it looks like. Well, the fortress have to give up because the food was over. There was too many sick people between the soldiers. And main commander Kuzmanek, he realized they could not fight forever. So he asked for a permission to give up the fortress. Nothing that's gonna left behind is gonna be used against us. So what Kuzmanek did, he decided to blow up the fortress. So the Austro-Hungarians destroyed every part of the fortress. They destroyed all of the bridges on the San and Via River. There's two rivers that goes to the city. They burn all the documents. They destroy the ammunition and cannons, things like that. So when the Russians came to the fortress in March 1915, the fortress was completely destroyed.
Fort number 1 isn't just an abandoned military site. It's a window into a world where borders were battlegrounds and survival depended on ingenuity. From its human-powered elevators and telegraph systems to its ancient moats, this fort tells a story of empires locked in a struggle for control with everyday soldiers at the heart of it all.
We'll leave it there for today, but if you enjoyed this story, don't miss our episode on Prussia's Forgotten Palace. Otherwise, Marcin, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Until next time, I'm Ryan Socash, signing off.